Hi there, Jody. Welcome everybody to my Stampin' Piece studio. I'm Mary Knabe from Westerville, Ohio. Today I have a really fun technique. It's something I've done a while ago, a very long while ago, and then thought about it again recently. And it's a technique I've included in my newest class to go, which is the Gathering Moments card class to go. Makes beautiful fall cards. If you are interested in seeing that or learning more about that class to go, you can find all of the information on stampinpiece.com. And it also went out in my email newsletters. So if you're not a part of my email list, you can also subscribe to that at stampinpiece.com. But again, that's the Gathering Moments card class to go. Today is Thursday, October 23rd, and it is the second of 3 free shipping days that Stampin' Up! Has for us. Stampin' Up! Is giving everyone who places an order of $75 or more free shipping. Okay, and then if you are placing that product order of $75 or more, you will, in addition to your free shipping, you will get from me my October One Sheet Wonder tutorial, as well as the Bundle of the Month video class. So it's a win-win-win for all of us. And I hope you'll be able to take advantage of that free shipping. It started yesterday and it ends tomorrow, midnight Mountain Time, October 24th. So don't wait too long. I don't want you to forget, or there's always the possibility that products may sell out. It didn't look like very much had when I was on yesterday, so that's good news. But shop early for best selection and enjoy that free shipping. All right, I'm ready to get started. The stamp set that I'm using today is a brand new one that will be coming out early November. So it's called the Pop-Up Petals. And here's the stamps and here's the dies. And what these things do right here is allow you to easily make pop-up cards. So do that pop-up effect on the inside of your cards. That's not what I'm working with today, but you will see that coming very soon. For now, I'm just using some of the stamps in this. I will tell you that if you're not already aware, November next month, Stampin' Up! Is changing or transitioning to its new packaging for both stamp sets and dies. They'll come in these thin plastic envelopes, which seem very sturdy and of good quality, in my opinion. And they're all the same size. That's what I like. So it's going to take up a lot less storage and everything's more uniform. So I love that about the new packaging. So let's get started. I'll be doing, excuse me, I'll be doing some stamping first. My fingers or my hands are very shaky today with the tremor. So it is what it is, and it's not going to stop me from stamping and doing what I love, but bear with me if you notice my hands shaking. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have this Post-it note. You can use masking paper, Post-it notes, sticky notes, and if you don't have either of those, you can even just use a piece of copy paper. And what I've done is, or what I'm going to do is, I want this to be, my sticky note, to be cut to the size I want to accommodate the sentiment I'll be adding to my card later. And you know what? I better double check my measurements here. I think it's, yes, 2 3/4 by 1 1/2. But of course, that will vary if you use a different sentiment. So let's see, 1 1/2. I think is what I said. by 2 3/4. And when I'm trying to cut sticky notes, I work with the sticky part up on top when I'm cutting. It's just a little bit easier for me to get that note in and out of my cutter. Now, the other thing is I could save this and use this later. If you don't have a sticky note or masking paper, what I would do is just put the teeniest, tiniest bit of adhesive on the back so that you would be able to take it off. Some of you may even have temporary adhesive, and that would work as well. But I'm just going to stick this right in the middle of my cardstock. And you can put this anywhere you want. You just want to be thinking about where you want your sentiment. So you need to, before you even start this technique, consider the size of the space you want for your sentiment. I want to make sure I measure that correctly. 1.5. Yes, okay. You know what they say, measure twice, cut once. Okay, just want to double check myself again. All right, but you just want to figure out what size area you want for the sentiment that you're going to be using. And then you make your adjustment accordingly. So I'm going to leave that there while I do some stamping. And I'm going to start with my Early Espresso. And I've pulled several stamps from the Pop-Up Petals collection because this set involves some two-step stamping. I'll also show you another sample of this technique afterwards in which I stamped and colored. But this particular stamp set involves two-step stamping. And if you're not sure what that is, well, by gosh, I'm going to be showing you. So no worries at all. And it's okay if your stamping overlaps some. In fact, I like it a little bit better when it does. So this is what I have so far. Now I'm going to fill in with some smaller stamps. I think this is a tulip. And again, it doesn't matter if the images overlap. I will be filling them in with ink and doing some fun coloring. Okay, that looks awfully busy. I probably should have added, I guess I did this when I was making my sample, added the color to the first set of flower stamps before I stamped the other. I think that might have been a little bit easier. So now I'm just trying to match this up without getting my head in the way. You know how that can be sometimes. And I'm going to put some here. I'm going to use, right now I'm using Gorgeous Grape, but I'll also be using Highland Heather, which is just, oh, I didn't do so good there. Highland Heather is just a little bit lighter shade of Gorgeous Grape. Okay, you know what? I'm going to stop and start again because I'm just not liking that. I stamped a lot more on this one than I did on my sample, and I can see now that it really is just too much. So my teachable moment at this point is start with the fact that less is more, okay? I thought I'm going to do a little bit more than my sample, but I ended up doing way too much, which is not at all what I wanted. And it was making it much harder for me to see all of my images. And I think this one I'm going to add just that little bit there and then up here. And then I'm going to add my color. One thing I wanted to point out on this stamp is that, let me clean it off and you can see a little better. I put a little arrow on the actual stamp itself. I put a little arrow pointing up with my Sharpie. And the reason I did that is so that I know that it's meeting up with the top of the coordinating stamp. Okay, so that's the reason I did that. So now I'll just fill in. I'm trying not to look, you know what, I'm going to stand. I'm trying to look over the top without getting my head in the camera area. So I'm not quite looking over the top. And I think I'm going to leave it like that, and then I'll add some color with the Highland Heather. And if you don't get it all filled in quite the way you want, I'll show you an easy fix, because I thought of this ahead of time. See, I've got a little more white in those petals than I want. But again, I'm trying not to look directly over the top. I don't think you need to see the top of my head. Okay, so then I'm going to use some Daffodil Delight for the inside of those flowers. Now this is a lot easier to match up. You might want to put an arrow there. Oh, come on, camera. You might want to put an arrow at the top if you'd like, but this one is much easier than the first one, because this on the left side is more of an oval shape, and the one on the right is very much a large circle. So you can see it's much easier for me to match that up. And as you can see, I'm just kind of twisting and turning my cardstock just to make it easier for me to stamp, rather than flipping my stamp upside down. And the leaves will need to be colored in. There is no second stamp image for the leaves, so I'll be coloring those with some Stampin' Write markers. But before I do that, I'm going to add now the tulips. I'll start here. And go like that, and like this. Apparently I have ink on my finger somewhere. And up here, I think I'll do this, and then one more. And again, it really is okay if things overlap. Okay, so I'm finished with those for now. Next, I'm going to fill in those tulips with Poppy Parade ink. Again, just matching up the solid image with the outline. I like this combination of colors. I wasn't sure what I wanted to use, so I tried a couple different things, but I ended up liking the Poppy Parade with the purples, the gorgeous Grape and the Highland Heather, and the Daffodil Delight. And I would say that looks pretty good to me. And so now I'm just going to fill in the leaves. So for these small leaves, and I'm using my Stampin' Write markers today. You could also use colored pencils. You could use Stampin' blends. You could even do a black and white card and not color anything in. Although I did use Early Espresso for this, not black. But any neutral that you choose to use. And remember that it is okay for the various images to overlap, because that's what happens in nature, right? Our flowers don't grow without touching those of the ones around them. You can see this is very easy to fill in with the markers. In fact, you could color in all the flowers with the markers if you don't want to do the two-step stamping. And let's see. So it truly feels like fall here in central Ohio. Yesterday, we didn't even get to 50 degrees. And I went walking, and boy, was it windy. And I think, yes, last night was in the high 30s. And I started thinking, oh, I wonder if I'm going to be able to plant my bulbs soon. But I don't think we're quite there. My sister always tells me, and she always has amazing tulips, but she always tells me you have to wait until we get to those freezing temperatures because the ground isn't completely cooled off yet from our hot summer. But soon enough, we'll get there. So now I'm filling in the stem and the leaves of these tulips, or what I'm calling a tulip. So the first green I used was granny apple green, and this one for the tulips is garden green. And the cardstock that I stamped on is 5 1/4 by 4 inches. So this is going to be a single layer card. You can do this technique with lots of different stamps. I'm thinking like Impressions of Bloom. Those, what do I want to say? It has the larger flowers. I think that would be really nice. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Now, I told you I would give you a tip for what you can do to fill in the white spaces if you didn't match up your two-step stamping. Like I said, if we're not looking straight over the top, it is harder. So usually I don't have quite so much to fill in, but again, I was trying to keep my head out of the camera view. So it's much harder to match those up when you're looking at an angle. And that's something you should think about all the time while you're stamping, especially two-step stamping. Look over the top. Don't look this way at an angle. Look over the top to place your stamping. That helps with getting your sentiments straight and exactly where you want them. Yeah, just very useful. I think that was one of the first things I learned when I started stamping. Oh, I guess, let's see, I've been a demonstrator 17, so I started stamping about 19 years ago. But that was one of the first things I learned, was that I was much more successful when I followed Susie's instruction and was looking over the top. And sometimes that means we stand up. Just a good rule of thumb to follow in this craft. Okay, I think that looks better. Now I'm ready to remove this, and this is what I have. Okay. I have that smudge, and that's just really bugging me, and I don't know how I plan to fix that, to be quite honest. I think the first time I was getting ink on my fingers, and I wasn't being careful when I flipped that over. Anyway, so now I want to stamp the image. So now you can see it's just one level surface. And I'm going to stamp this sentiment, "Thanks for being there," right in the center. So one thing to think about here, oftentimes we stamp a background, and then we cut a piece of cardstock to add our sentiment and place the cardstock on top. This is just a little bit different technique, and I think it's one that people will say, wow, how'd you do that? That kind of thing, because it's pretty impressive that you can get that look of something being 2 or 3 dimensional, but it's completely flat. Okay. Let's see here. The next thing, I do want to stamp some butterflies, and I'll put one right here, and I'm trying to decide if I want one there. No, looks a little crowded there. I'll do here, and I don't know. Actually, maybe I will go here, but I'm just going to take it off my paper just a wee bit. Okay, I like that. I'm going to then color my butterflies, again using Stampin' Right markers. This first blue is Lost Lagoon. And then I'm using a lighter shade, Pool Party, that I think goes really nicely with that Lost Lagoon. I did pretty good covering up my smudge there. If you don't already know, Stampin' Up! Is discontinuing our original Stampin' Right markers. Since we started selling the Stampin' Blends many years ago, these have become, the Stampin' Blends have become much more popular than the Stampin' Right markers. These are water-based, but they are discontinuing them. I did look on the shopping site today, and the Stampin' Right markers are all available, and they've been discounted. Okay, they've been discounted. So if you don't have them, or maybe you haven't updated your set in a very long time, this may be just the right time for you to do that. They are not sold individually, but they are sold by color families. I will tell you too that, let me see here. I want to say they changed the fine tip maybe, I don't know, 2 years ago, I'm thinking. And what I love about the new, in fact, I replaced all mine for the reason that they write so well. So I love using the Stampin' Right markers with the fine tip for signing some of my cards. And they're also good for fixing up those little boo-boos when we need to fill in just a little bit of space. Okay, so now I think I am ready. Oh, no, I have one more thing I want to do before I put this on my card base, and I am going to use some graph paper, but I have, this is Pecan Pie, the dark shade, and I just want to add some splatters around. This is another way to kind of bring everything together and make any smudges you might have a little less noticeable. And you can do as much or as little as you want. That looks pretty good to me. Not sure how well you can see that, so let me hold it up a little bit. See how that bit of splatter just kind of grounds everything and brings it all together instead of things looking like they're floating in air. So a very simple, easy technique to add. So now I'm ready to put this on my card front or card base. My card base is Gorgeous Grape. I cut it 5.5 to 8.5 inches, and I scored it 4 1/4 down the middle. So I'm going to add this now. I'm glad I started over. That was a little too much. A little too much stamping on that first round. Okay. Then I'm going to add, I can pick it up here, some white to the inside, and I'm going to stamp a coordinating sentiment. This one reads, "You get me," and I appreciate that. So thank you for being there. You get me, and I appreciate that. And I know exactly who I'm going to send this to when I'm finished. This, a friend and I, we were both dealing with things, and it was nice to have somebody to kind of commiserate with. And I know we don't always like to call our friends when we're feeling a little blue. You don't want to be the downer, right? But it ended up being we needed each other. So that was a really good thing. So I'll go ahead and add this to the inside, and then I'm going to put a couple of finishing touches on the card front. And the first finishing touch is going to be, let me grab a piece of scrap. And I'm using my Wink of Stella. Oops. See it? Sometimes it's runny. You have to get it started, but you don't want a blob coming out on your project that you're working on. But I'm just going to add some Wink of Stella to my butterflies. Give them a little shimmer and shine. This would also be pretty on the flowers if you wanted to do that. And then lastly, I have this beautiful, it's actually Mossy Meadow, but I think it still goes nicely with the other greens I have in here. And one thing about this, a lot of times with ribbons, there is not a clear front and back, or the two sides look the same. I don't know that this is necessarily front and back, but what I want to point out to you is that on one side, you get more of the Mossy Meadow color with a little bit of the gold shimmer. And on the opposite side, you get lots of the gold with just some of that Mossy Meadow around the edges. So I'm going to focus on the more green side, which means when I pull my second loop through, I'm probably going to need to twist it a little bit. So this tail on the left ends up with more of the green side showing. And I know some of you just don't like making bows, and it kind of breaks my heart, to be honest. I love adding bows. I don't put them on everything, but when I do, I'm always so glad I did. But sometimes people tie it once and they think it should be perfect, or they think both loops and tails should match, and they just don't. They just don't. That's why I always give myself, and if I can work from the bolt, I do. But I try to make sure I give myself enough length that I have that excess to pull the loops and tails in either direction. So now I'm just going to snip these ends Okay, now today the camera's moving more than it did the last time, or the view, I should say. The camera's not moving, but it's placed exactly like it was on Tuesday. I just don't know. And I don't know who else to ask. I've asked so many people. I've done, even asked AI. Ugh. But I guess compared to lots of things that are happening in life and people are dealing with, that floating camera is small beans, right? And now I'm going to use a mini glue dot on the back of the knot of the bow. I don't like putting adhesive anywhere else on the back because I want that bow to be able to lift up and stand up off of the paper. But now I want to decide where I excuse me, where I actually want that bow. This is where I have it on my sample, but I'm not sure. I think I'm going to go this way this time. And there's that card with that fun stamping technique. Does the technique have a name? If it does, I don't know. I'm calling it the mask it, stamp it, add sentiment technique. Okay? Mask it, stamp it, add sentiment. Lori, I'm so glad you're going to be trying this. That makes me happy. Oh gosh, we have people from Canada, British Columbia, the US, different states. I'm thinking this one named Therese. Is that French? I'm not sure. Melanie, that's funny. You heard my voice as you were scrolling and that brought you here. I love it. Thank you all so much for joining me. Here is my sample card. Do you notice what's different here? Let me hold it up. In addition to the bow being in a different place, and the stamping might be a little bit different. The butterfly, you know, the images aren't necessarily in the exact spot. But does anybody see the difference? Look how bright white this is. And why is that? Because I did not add the splatter to it that I did on this one. So it really is neither's right nor wrong. It's a matter of personal preference. I personally like them both. I more typically go with the cleaner, less is more, but sometimes I just think adding that bit of splatter is so fun. So there's those. Now let me show you one more I made with this technique. Now I did cut my stamping layer smaller so that I could add layers. So and I forget the name of the stamp set. Let me grab it. Jolly Holly is the name of the stamp set. And it's got some great sentiments and words to mix and match. It's got a die set and it has a hybrid embossing folder. So maybe I'll be pulling that out for a demonstration rather soon. But on this one, I stamped with crumb cake and then I colored with Stampin' Write markers on the holly. And then I thought, and you can see the difference. I used two colors of green. I used, what did I use? Garden green and shaded spruce. And you can see how the Stampin' Write markers allows you to add more than one color, but those colors do not necessarily blend. You can clearly see the lines of where I added the darker shaded spruce color. Now, the bells and the poinsettias and the berries I colored with Stampin' Blends. I like how this turned out. I will say that because the images were so small, the stamps were so small, I found this a little bit harder to do because you want to have the overlap over your masking, but you don't want to go so far out that your images aren't able to touch the masked area, because then you don't get that shape. Okay. But I do like how it turned out. I like how I used pecan pie light and then dark Stampin' Blends for the bells because it gives it kind of a gold look to it, that pecan pie. And then, of course, I added a few of the gold low profile dots to give it a little added shine in there. All right, I hope you enjoyed this demonstration. Let me flip back here. I'll scroll just a second and see if there's any questions. Nope. Okay, if you joined me late, I'm so glad you jumped on, but please do go back and watch from the beginning so that you get all of the tips and steps so that you can give the Stampin' Technique a try and make some wonderful cards. And please remember, the most important part of making and finding joy in creating is sending the cards. Okay? So equal parts of joy for us and joy for others when we send our cards. So, we live in a world where many people are hurting. Mental health is an issue for many people. Many people are lonely. So reach out to somebody today or send them your handmade cards. Sent handmade cards are so much better than a collection of handmade cards sitting on a shelf collecting dust, right? All right, everybody, have a great day. Have a great weekend. And I look forward to seeing you next week. As a reminder, be sure to check out more videos on this channel, Stampin' Peace with Mary Knabe. And if you like what you see here, please subscribe to the channel and also share it so other crafters can enjoy creative inspiration also. And when you want more details on the cards you see in these videos, there's usually a link in the description that takes you to my blog, stampinpeace.com, for products used, dimensions, things like that. Have a great weekend. Thanks so much for joining me.